I stepped into the church with Analia, my wife, and immediately felt a heavy atmosphere pressing down on my chest like a sheet of lead. It was the day of Rex's funeral. My younger brother, Rex Avery, only 28 years old, now lying motionless in the polished wooden casket at the front. Phoenix, Arizona, in the sweltering month of June, but inside this church, the air was chilling to the bone. The long wooden pews were filled with people, heads bowed low, lips murmuring prayers. The whispered verses of the Bible echoed softly like a somber soundtrack to the grief of an entire family, or at least what remained of it. I am Alvin Avery, 36 years old, an FBI special agent specializing in financial crimes. My job is to expose fraudsters, money laundering networks, and kingpins hiding behind the facade of polished businessmen. But today, I was not an agent. I was simply an older brother trying to come and bid farewell to my younger sibling one last time. Analia held my hand a little tighter as if she could sense the trembling spreading from my palm. She had always been like that, steadfast by my side ever since we met in college, through all the storms of life. The sound of our footsteps on the marble floor rang out clearly, too clearly in this quiet space. At first, only a few heads turned, curious glances. But then, like a wave, the entire church turned to look at us. Cold, piercing stares bored into me like needles. The ongoing prayer faltered, then stopped altogether. Silence descended so heavy that I could hear my own heart pounding. They looked at me as if I were a stranger, an unwelcome intruder in this sacred place. As though my presence was a curse, a stain defiling the mournful atmosphere. My father, Jackson Avery, 63 years old, stood near the main aisle. He was tall, with snow-white hair and a weathered face from years working in a machine shop. When he turned and saw me, his expression darkened. His eyes, oh God, those eyes held something terrifying. Anger, contempt, despair, and hatred mixed into a poisonous blend. I felt it pierce through my skin. At first he said nothing, just stood there, clutching the Bible in his hand so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Then he uttered a single sentence, his voice loud enough for the entire church to hear. "I wish it was you lying in that casket, Alvin." Those words sliced through the air thick with tears and pain like a sharp knife. They hung there, cutting off any remaining sound. My heart constricted as if someone were squeezing it. I stood frozen, trying to swallow, but my throat was parched. How could he say that? How could he wish his own son dead instead of the other? But I knew. The agony of losing a child was driving him mad. The people around us began to murmur. Whispers spread like fire on dry grass. Some shook their heads in dismay. Others looked at me as if I were a criminal who had just stepped into a sanctuary. Someone whispered, "That's the older brother. He's an FBI agent. The one who killed his own brother." Those words stabbed into my ears, making me reel. I didn't kill Rex. It wasn't me. But the truth was more complicated, and here, now, I was simply the condemned without a trial. My mother, Denise Avery, 60 years old, stood right in front of the casket. She was dressed in black, her shoulders shaking violently like autumn leaves in the wind. She had her head bowed, arms clutching a white wreath tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. When she looked up and saw me, her face twisted in agony. She lost control, truly lost control. She charged straight at me so fast I couldn't react. Her fingernails clawed at my chest through my shirt, burning with pain. You're a murderer! You killed my son, my Rex." She screamed and cursed as she cried, her voice breaking with raw pain and hatred. The grief made her barely able to stand. She staggered but kept lunging forward, hands reaching out as if to tear me apart. The people around her quickly restrained her, arms wrapping tightly around her, pulling her back. But she struggled, eyes wild with fury, voice shattering in desperation. "An older brother killing his own flesh and blood brother," she wailed, each word ripped from her chest. "Are you even human anymore? Are you even my son?" A relative spoke up in panic, trying to calm her. "Please, sister, calm down." But she brushed them off violently, wrenching free from their grasp. "Let go of me. He killed my son." Some people around bowed their heads. Others looked at me with judgment in their eyes. Whispers rose between the pews. Blood brothers reduced to this tragedy. I stood there, my entire body rigid. My heart was being crushed, the pain so intense I could barely breathe. I didn't react, didn't fight back, didn't say a word. Why? Because I understood. They were drowning in unimaginable loss. Rex was the youngest, their last hope, and deep inside me there was a corner of self-blame. I believed I had contributed to this tragedy. If I hadn't, if I could have stopped it. And Aaliyah stood close beside me, gripping my hand tightly. A gentle but firm squeeze, as if saying that even if the whole world turned its back, she was still here. She was my only anchor in this moment. Her face was pale, but her eyes looked at me with love and strength. It didn't stop there. My father stepped closer, pointing directly at my face. His finger trembled, his face flushed red with rage. "You don't belong here. Get out right now. From this moment on, you're no longer my son." His voice boomed throughout the church, those words hammered into my head like blows. No longer his son. After all the years I'd tried, sending money home, fixing the leaking roof, taking them to doctor's appointments. And now, I was discarded like a broken object. The murmurs spread quickly like wildfire. He probably deliberately took out his brother to make a name for himself at the FBI, someone whispered. An FBI agent shooting his own family, there must be something shady behind it. Those venomous words spread like a virus. I stood motionless, eyes fixed on the cold marble floor. I felt as if my entire body had frozen solid, with no strength left to defend myself or speak up. Defend what? The truth was that Rex died during a raid and I was there, but I didn't pull the trigger. Still, they didn't believe it. No one did. I no longer wanted to stay. I didn't want to hear more bitter words, didn't want to turn Rex's funeral into a battlefield for even one more second. I gently squeezed Analia's hand, signaling that it was time to leave. She nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. We turned and walked out, each step heavy as if carrying tons of stone. Behind us, my mother's sobs echoed, mingled with the malicious whispers, and my father's voice still rang in my ears. "Never come back! You're a curse on this family." Those words clung to me like a real curse, following me out of the church and into the blazing Arizona sun. The sun scorched my skin, but it was nothing compared to the burning inferno raging inside my chest. I walked as if dragging my feet, each step pulling along a heap of shattered memories. Analia still held my hand tightly, silent, but I could feel the warmth from her palm, the only thing keeping me from completely collapsing. We got into the car, an old SUV I used for my daily commute to work. The door slammed shut, cutting off the sounds from the outside world, but it couldn't silence the echoes in my head. The air inside the vehicle was oppressively quiet, as if my father's curse had sucked all the oxygen out of this confined space. After a few minutes of silence that felt like hours, Analia spoke first. Her voice was gentle yet full of resolve, like a cool stream flowing through a parched desert. "I know today was more painful for you than anything else, but you tried, and being there to say goodbye to Rex, that's what you needed to do." She turned to me, placed her hand on my thigh, and squeezed lightly. "They're hurting, honey. Grief blinds people, but you're not the bad guy. You were the best big brother Rex ever had." Those comforting words acted like a painkiller, gradually seeping into me. I felt a little easier to breathe, even though the pain was still there, smoldering like an open wound that hadn't yet scabbed over. It bled slowly, not in gushes, but enough to drain me completely. I nodded, forcing a strained smile. "Thank you. But how could they say those things? Dad wished it was me dead instead of Rex. And Mom, she clawed at me like I was a monster." My voice broke and I had to pause to swallow. Analia shook her head, her eyes glistening. "They don't really mean it. It's just, losing a child is the greatest pain. But you lost your brother too, and you're suffering alone." She pulled me closer and kissed my cheek softly. "I'm here. We'll get through this together." Those words helped calm me, but the suffocating weight and the feeling of being cursed at my own brother's funeral pulled my mind back to the memories from 6 months ago. The moment everything began spiraling out of control. Like an old film reel, those images flooded back, so vivid I could almost hear the pages turning in the office. 6 months earlier, I was at the peak of my career. As an FBI special agent specializing in financial crimes in Phoenix, I had been involved in countless cases, from small-time scammers to international networks. But Operation Black Orchid was a different beast altogether. It was a sophisticated multi-level fraud organization that had forced the FBI to pull resources from multiple states. They didn't just dabble in petty scams. They had built a shadowy empire causing widespread damage across the United States. They targeted the elderly, people easily lured by promises of high-return investments. They created fake investment funds, laundered money through cryptocurrency, impersonated identities to open bank accounts, and set up complex pyramid schemes to siphon money from thousands of victims. I clearly remember the initial reports: an old woman in Texas who lost her entire retirement savings, an elderly man in California who took his own life because of overwhelming debt. Those stories haunted me, driving me to throw myself into the work like a madman. I was one of the agents closely following the case from the very beginning. I knew every link in the chain, from local foot soldiers to the kingpins hiding overseas. I understood their methods, using anonymous digital wallets, transferring funds through unregulated crypto exchanges, and even employing AI to generate fake profiles. I tracked every phase of their expansion, starting in Arizona, spreading to Nevada, then California, and now across the entire West. Every day I spent hours in front of the computer screen analyzing transaction data, tracing IPs, and coordinating with other teams. That was my job, and I loved it, until that fateful day. One ordinary morning, I arrived at the office early with a hot cup of coffee in hand. The analysis department sent over a supplemental file. It was a thick dossier, light blue cover covered in red notes and highlighted lines, signaling something far from simple. "New suspect emerging in the transaction system," my colleague said as he handed it to me. I sat down at my desk, opened the file, and the world around me seemed to stop. When I saw the name Rex Avery, my heart nearly skipped a beat. My entire body went numb, like I'd been electrocuted. I froze in place, eyes glued to the page. No way. Rex, my younger brother, appearing in Black Orchid's suspicious transaction list? This had to be a mistake. Rex was just a wayward kid who liked to party but not a criminal. Or was he? The file contained enough evidence to leave me reeling. Security camera footage from a local bank, bank statements showing Rex withdrawing money from an elderly victim's card, a 78-year-old woman in Phoenix who lost $50,000 in savings. A fuzzy audio recording, but Rex's voice was clear in a phone call. "Yes, the transaction is complete." Everything pointed to Rex. I sat there, hands trembling as I turned the pages, desperately searching for a flaw, an error. But there was none. The data connected perfectly. Rex wasn't just involved, he was deep in the network. I immediately stood up and rushed to my superior's office. "Boss, I need to recuse myself from the case," I said, my voice shaking. "Personal reasons. The new suspect is my brother." My boss, a tough veteran with 20 years of experience, looked at me over his reading glasses. He shook his head and refused outright. "No can do, Alvin. No one understands Black Orchid's structure better than you. Your departure would directly impact the case progress. We're in a rush. Thousands of victims are waiting." I tried to argue, citing conflict of interest and protecting my family, but he cut me off. "Moreover, we need someone with both the capability and knowledge to handle a smart, unpredictable suspect deeply connected to the network like Rex. You're the best choice." I left the office torn apart inside. Caught between the duty of an exemplary federal agent and blood ties, I was trapped. Helplessness overwhelmed me, choking me as I signed off on the file. I sat alone in the conference room, staring at Rex's name on the page. How had he gotten involved? Rex had always been the little brother I loved, even though he was trouble. From a young age, he was mischievous, dropped out of school, hung out with the wrong crowd. But I always protected him, sent money home to help. And now, I had to hunt down my own brother? I prayed it was all a mistake or coincidence, a similar name, a fake account. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. At that moment, I had no idea that the decision to stay on the case wasn't just a professional choice, but the beginning of the darkest period of my life. From the instant I signed to continue the investigation, everything gradually veered off its familiar path. And only in hindsight did I realize that decision had dragged me into the nightmare that shattered the Avery family and my life forever after. After regaining my composure and returning to work, my colleagues and I in the task force entered the phase of surveillance and evidence collection against the links in Black Orchid. The FBI office in Phoenix became our battlefield. Late-night meetings stretched on, computer screens filled with transaction data, IP addresses, and surveillance videos. We tracked every movement, a suspicious call from Nevada, a cryptocurrency transfer vanishing in California, and secret meetings in suburban bars. I sat there, pretending to focus, but my heart pounded every time the system flagged a related suspect. And then, the name Rex Avery appeared again in a new position, as if my brother wasn't just aware of it, but directly involved. The first time it was withdrawing money from a victim's account, the next meeting a high-level operative, then logging into the organization's digital wallet. Each time I saw his name, it felt like a punch to the chest. My little brother couldn't be this deep, I whispered to myself, but the evidence kept piling up. I desperately searched for any detail that could prove Rex's innocence. An anomalous transaction, a sign of entrapment, a technical error. I spent hours analyzing data, zooming in on security footage, checking timestamps, even using software to compare digital signatures. There has to be a mistake, I told myself. But the more I dug, the clearer it became that Rex wasn't just involved. He was actively carrying out some of the unauthorized withdrawals. He wasn't a victim. He was an accomplice. One video showed Rex smiling and talking to an elderly victim, convincing her to sign over the money. Bank statements matched his schedule. Each new piece of evidence added to the file left me breathless. I painfully realized Rex had stepped far too deep into the criminal world I once thought existed only in case reports. That world was now swallowing my brother whole, and I was the one who had to pull him out, or put him behind bars. There were moments when I wanted to call my parents to warn them, or secretly contact Rex and urge him to flee before everything exploded. One evening, sitting alone in my car parked outside the office, I picked up my phone and dialed Rex's number. My finger hovered over the call button. "Rex, run. I know everything you've done," I imagined saying. But then I deleted the number and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. The duty of a federal agent, the conscience of a law enforcement professional, and my own sense of integrity prevented me from breaking the rules. I couldn't betray the victims awaiting justice. The elderly women who lost their entire retirement savings, the families torn apart by debt. They deserved protection. If I helped Rex escape, I would become an accomplice. But every night I lay awake, imagining Rex being arrested, my parents sobbing, and me standing there powerless. During those days, Analia noticed the change in me. She came home earlier, cooked my favorite meals, and sat beside me on the sofa. "Honey, I can see you're exhausted. Tell me what's wrong," she said gently. I shared part of it, the work pressure, Black Orchid. But I hid Rex's involvement, afraid it would worry her. "It's just a heavy workload. I'll be fine," I said, holding her tighter. But inside, the torment grew fiercer. I wondered why he had fallen so far. Was it because our parents spoiled him? Or because I was too busy with my career and didn't pay enough attention to him? The investigation pulled me along relentlessly. We monitored Rex through street cameras, watching him drive to meeting points. My colleagues began to sense my silence. "Alvin, are you okay?" they asked. I nodded, but inside I was walking a tightrope. The tension built. Would Rex be arrested soon? Did he know I was watching him? Finally, when the evidence reached a sufficient level, federal arrest warrants were issued for Rex and several other suspects. I sat in the office, staring at the warrant on my desk. The judge's scrawled signature was clear. "Arrest Rex Avery." My hands shook as I held the paper. I knew the unavoidable moment had arrived. "Boss, can I step back now?" I asked one last time. He shook his head. "You have to be there, Alvin, to make sure everything goes smoothly." I nodded, but inside I felt dead. I called Analia, my voice faltering. "I'll be home late tonight. I love you." She sounded worried. "Be careful at work." I hung up, feeling like I was heading straight to hell. That night, the task force deployed to surround an abandoned warehouse. The temporary rendezvous point Black Orchid was believed to be using. It was in an old industrial area on the outskirts of Phoenix under the desert's starlit sky. The atmosphere was taut as a bowstring. Everyone waited in silence for orders. We wore bulletproof vests, guns in hand, lying in wait in the darkness. My heart pounded, cold sweat pouring down despite the cool night. "All units, listen up. Alpha team, Beta team, get into position," the boss whispered over the radio. I glanced at my watch. 2 a.m. inside the warehouse, flickering lights and muffled laughter. Rex was there, I knew it. The suspense surged. Would he surrender, or would everything fall apart? When the SWAT team breached, flashlights swept through the dark space, shouts of surrender echoing urgently. "FBI, drop your weapons. Get down on the floor." The suspects inside panicked, scattering in chaos. We subdued them one by one cuffed, another struggling but taken down. Dust filled the air, the smell of old machine oil mixing with the stench of fear sweat. I rushed in behind, gun raised, but my eyes scanned for Rex. And then, amid the chaos, Rex suddenly appeared. He jumped out from behind a crate, face pale, eyes wild. In a moment of confusion, he drew his gun and aimed it straight at me. The first person he recognized, his brother. Time seemed to freeze. I stood stunned for a split second, my heart gripped in a vice. Rex's gun pointed directly at my chest, his finger trembling on the trigger. I shouted his name, my voice breaking. I had never imagined the two of us facing each other in such a tragic way, let alone that my brother's gun would be aimed at me. His face, the one that used to beam when I bought him ice cream, was now twisted in terror. "You, Alvin? Why are you here?" he stammered, but the gun stayed pointed. In that extremely tense situation, I tried to stay calm, urgently pleading with my brother to drop the weapon. "Rex, put the gun down. I'll protect you. I'll help you get a lighter sentence if you surrender right now." I stepped slowly toward him, hands raised, my own gun lowered. Colleagues around me aimed at Rex, but I signaled them to hold fire. "Don't shoot. That's my brother. I'll talk him down." My heart thundered like a drum, sweat stinging my eyes. Rex's eyes were bloodshot with panic, desperation, and fear of capture. He kept shaking his head, saying it wasn't his fault, that he was forced into it, that he didn't want this. "Bro, I was coerced. They made me do it. I didn't want." His voice trembled, tears streaming down. In the instant he seemed about to pull the trigger, everything happened too fast. I saw his finger tighten, and then a gunshot rang out sharply in the enclosed warehouse. Not from Rex's gun, but from the SWAT team. A bullet struck his chest. Rex was thrown backward, collapsing onto the cold concrete floor. Blood spread beneath him under the flickering flashlight beams. I let out a heart-wrenching scream and rushed to catch my brother. I knelt down, cradling Rex in my arms, pressing the wound with my hands as dark red blood soaked through my fingers. "Rex, stay with me. It's me." He looked at me, eyes growing dim, lips moving faintly. "Bro, I'm sorry." His body grew colder, his breathing faint. I couldn't even cry. The pain was too immense, blocking all emotion. There was only the sound of my heartbeat and the warmth of his blood on my hands. In that moment, the world seemed to collapse around me. Colleagues shouting, radios crackling, orders to clear the rest of the area. All faded into meaningless noise as I watched my brother gasp his last breaths in my arms. Rex died, eyes still open, staring at me as if in accusation. I held him tightly, rocking back and forth, whispering, "Rex, please don't leave me." Colleagues pulled me away, but I struggled. "Let go. That's my brother. They dragged me outside under the desert sky where the cold wind blew. I collapsed onto the ground, hands covered in blood, staring up at the stars. How had it come to this? I had tried to save him, but I failed. The pain cut like a knife, and I knew that from now on my life would be forever changed. After the raid, I was immediately required to participate in a full debriefing of the entire incident before the internal investigation team and FBI leadership. They took me back to headquarters that very night, under the flickering neon lights of Phoenix. The conference room was cold, smelling of stale coffee and paperwork. I sat facing three people: my direct supervisor, an internal affairs investigator, and a bureau representative attorney. "Start from the beginning, Alvin," my boss said, his voice low but firm. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady, and recounted every second of that fateful moment. From the team breaching the warehouse, the echoing shouts, to Rex appearing and pointing his gun at me. "He said he was coerced, then his finger tightened on the trigger," I recounted, my voice faltering. They took notes and asked for details. "Did you fire? Which colleague fired first?" I shook my head. "It wasn't me. It was SWAT to protect me." The debriefing lasted 2 hours, but to me it felt like centuries. Every word was like bringing Rex back to life, only to kill him all over again. My report was complete, detailed, and fully compliant with procedure. I listed timelines, positions, spoken words, everything according to FBI regulations. But each line felt like another knife slicing into a wound that hadn't yet healed. When I signed at the bottom of the page, my hand trembled, smearing the ink in a streak. "Good job, Alvin. Go home and rest," my boss said. But how could I rest? I got home at dawn. Analia was waiting at the door, her face pale with worry. She hugged me tightly, asking nothing, just whispering, "You're home. I was so worried about you." I told her everything, tears streaming down my face. "Rex, he died in my arms." Analia cried with me, stroking my back. "You didn't do anything wrong. You did everything you could. The rest, it's not your fault." But those words only comforted me partially. The pain still smoldered like embers under ash. Soon after, the media exploded with coverage of the Black Orchid takedown. The next morning, as I tried to sleep, my phone buzzed incessantly. I opened my eyes and saw messages from colleagues. "Turn on the TV." I switched to the local news channel and my heart sank. "Major fraud ring busted. FBI agent shoots and kills suspect, his own brother." The ticker scrolled across the bottom of the screen, accompanied by photos of the warehouse scene. My name appeared in primetime reports, repeated on CNN, Fox News, and even spreading to the local Arizona Republic. "Alvin Avery, financial crimes agent, faces family tragedy in Black Orchid operation." They interviewed experts, analyzed conflicts of interest, and speculated about possible cover-ups. The news spread faster than I could have imagined, like a virus on social media. The hashtag FBI brother killer trended, with people commenting, "The brother killed him to advance his career?" I turned off the TV, but those images burned into my mind. How could they twist it like that? I didn't shoot, but to the public, I was the villain. My parents learned about it from the media before I could even call them. I had planned to contact them that very morning to explain everything before the news spread, but I was one step too late. My phone rang. Mom's name appeared on the screen. The moment I answered, before I could say a word, her voice exploded through the receiver, shrill from crying. You're a murderer. My son is dead. Rex is dead because of you." Her voice shattered, screaming and sobbing as if every breath carried hatred. "Are you even human anymore? He was your own brother. Give me my son back. Give me Rex back." I gripped the phone tightly, my throat choking up. "Mom, listen to me." But she didn't stop. "Shut up. I don't want to hear another word from you. Did I raise you just so you could kill your brother?" Then my father's voice cut in, deeper but no less heavy, like a slow-delivered verdict. "Alvin, how could you do this? Rex was your brother, your own blood. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, clinging to the last shreds of reason. "Dad," Rex pointed a gun at me. SWAT had to fire to protect everyone. I begged him to surrender. I tried. A brief silence. I thought they might be listening, but no. My mother erupted again, her voice nearly a shriek. "You're lying. You've always been jealous of Rex. Ever since you were kids. Now you killed him to get a promotion to play the hero, right?" Each word struck me like a blow to the chest. "That's not how it was," I said, my voice fading so weak I could barely hear myself. My mother continued, "If you were really my son, you would have protected him, not sided with outsiders." The call dragged on like torture. They didn't ask if I was okay. They didn't ask how hard I had tried. There was only cursing, condemnation, and pain weaponized against me. Finally, my father spoke again. His voice turned cold, resolute, no longer trembling. "From now on, you're no longer my son. I disown you. Forever." The line went dead with a harsh beep. The call ended. I sat frozen in place. The phone slipped from my hand and fell to the floor without me noticing. Disown me? After all the years I'd tried to be a good son? The room was terrifyingly silent. And for the first time in my life, I understood what it felt like to lose your family, not through death, but because they had willingly pushed you out of their lives. Even though I knew my parents had always favored and spoiled Rex, I never expected them to react this violently. From childhood, that favoritism had been obvious. I remember clearly when I was 8 and Rex was 6, he broke Mom's favorite vase, but she just smiled. "It's okay, Rex was just playing. Alvin, clean it up." I had to kneel and pick up the shards while Rex got hugs. For Rex, they always believed time would fix him. For me, there was only strict discipline, constant criticism, and endless expectations. "Alvin, you have to get good grades. Set an example for your brother," Dad would yell whenever I brought home a B. My childhood was a series of concessions, being treated as the one responsible for my brother's every mishap, big or small. Once Rex got into a fight with the neighbor kid and made his nose bleed. My parents defended Rex. He was just defending himself. And I got scolded for not watching him closely enough. I grew up feeling like a miniature adult, always carrying the burden while Rex was free to run wild. Even as an adult, despite all my efforts to support them, sending money to pay off bank debts, fixing the leaking roof after a storm, taking them for regular checkups at the best hospital in Phoenix, they treated it as my obvious duty, never once acknowledging or thanking me. "Alvin, you're with the FBI, you're supposed to take care of the family," Dad would say, as if it were obligatory. Meanwhile, if Rex just came home for a meal or bought a small gift like the cheap watch he gave Mom for her birthday, they would praise him endlessly, seeing it as proof that he was kind, affectionate, and thoughtful toward the family. "Our Rex is wonderful," Mom would exclaim while I sat there in silence. I wasn't jealous, just saddened by the unfairness. But I never imagined that favoritism and spoiling would turn into such blind hatred now. From loving Rex, they had turned to hating me, the one who killed him. It wasn't just my family turning away, I also faced whispers from relatives and neighbors. The news spread quickly, and the old neighborhood where my parents lived became a hotspot. My aunt called, "Alvin, you chose the law over your family. Rex died because of you." Relatives gossiped behind my back. "Alvin was too ambitious and now he's lost his brother." Neighbors whispered when I visited, "Look, there goes the one who killed his own brother." Those contemptuous stares and murmurs were like poisoned arrows. Every accusation from my parents, every scornful look from relatives and neighbors struck directly at my self-respect, making me feel like I was about to collapse even while standing tall. I went home and collapsed onto the bed, my mind spinning. Analia sat beside me, holding my hand. "Honey, don't listen to them. They don't know the truth." But the truth was that Rex was dead and I was there. Could I live with that? In the days that followed, I tried to see my parents. I drove to the old house, my heart pounding. Neighbors gathered outside, pointing. Dad opened the door, his face dark. "What are you doing here? Get out!" Mom cried. "Rex is dead because of you." I knelt down, begging. "Mom, Dad, please listen to me." But they slammed the door. I stood outside as rare desert rain fell, soaking me through. Suspense built. Would they ever forgive me? Or was this the end? And then at Rex's funeral, the humiliation of being verbally attacked and chased away like a stranger made me realize I had lost everything. The scene of Jackson cursing me, Denise clawing at me, and the condemning stares from dozens of people still haunted me like a scar that would never heal. I remembered it clearly, standing in the church, driven out like a mangy dog. Looking back now, that pain multiplies tenfold. I lost my brother, my parents, my honor. All I have left is Analia and a fragile job. But deep down, I feel something strange. My parents' reaction was too extreme, as if they were hiding something. Doubt creeps in, but I push it away. For now, I just want to forget. 3 days after the funeral, I tried to reach out again. First by phone. I sat on the sofa in our living room, phone in hand, taking several deep breaths before dialing. The ringtone went on for a long time, but no one answered. I called again, this time my mother's number. Still silence. What about texts? I composed a long one. "Mom, Dad, I know you're all in pain, but please let me explain. I didn't kill Rex. I loved him. I sent it, but there was no read receipt. The messages just sat there, cold on the screen like pleas lost in the desert. I didn't give up. 2 days later, I drove to the old family home on the outskirts of Phoenix. The familiar road with its low wooden houses and prickly saguaro cacti lining the sides. My heart pounded as I parked in front of the gate. I stepped out carrying a bouquet of white flowers, the kind Rex loved as a kid. "It's me, Alvin. I've come to visit you," I called out, my voice trembling. The windows were shut tight, but I heard movement inside. Then the door cracked open and my mother's face appeared, twisted with anger. "How dare you show up here? Get out!" she shouted, slamming the door in my face. The lock clicked sharply like a slap. I stood there, the bouquet falling to the ground, my heart aching sharply. Why wouldn't they give me a chance? I knocked again. "Mom, open the door. I just want to talk." But only shouts came from inside. "Get out of here, you murderer!" Every time I appeared on their porch, my parents didn't just curse and chase me away like a stranger. They loudly called the neighbors out to witness, as if my presence was a threat or a stain that needed to be eradicated. A week after the funeral, my father opened the door, his face flushed red. "What do you want? Come to finish off me and your mother too?" He yelled loudly, calling out to the neighbors, "Everyone come see. The brother killer is here." And they came. Familiar faces from my childhood. The neighbor who fixed cars, the lady who ran the corner store, now looking at me like I was a monster. "Alvin, how could you do this? Isn't Rex's death enough?" someone whispered. I tried to explain. "Everyone, it's not like that." Rex pointed a gun at me, but they shook their heads and interrupted. "You chose the FBI over your family. Happy now?" I turned away, walking off under their scrutinizing stares, my heart heavy as stone. They even gathered up every memento connected to me. Family photos hanging on the walls, gifts I'd given like the watch my father wore, even childhood framed pictures of me and Rex grinning ear to ear, and threw them all out onto the street. They scattered everywhere, glass shattering, photos tearing, lying in the dirt like worthless trash. I knelt down to pick them up, tears streaming. "Mom, Dad, please don't do this." But my mother shouted, "Those aren't my son's things. Take them all away." The neighbors, witnessing the scene, looked at me with wary, contemptuous, and fearful eyes. They gossiped behind my back. "See? The one who killed his own brother. Now his parents have disowned him. He's a monster in an agent's clothing. He brings bad luck to the family." Pain, disappointment, and despair wrapped around me like a thick fog, obscuring everything. I went home and collapsed onto the bed, my mind reeling. Analia sat beside me, stroking my hair. "Honey, I know how much you're hurting. But eventually they'll understand. I shook my head. No, they won't. They truly hate me. Those nights I couldn't sleep, replaying the scene of them throwing things out, the shouts, the contemptuous stares. The pain piled up. Losing Rex, losing my parents, losing even the beautiful memories. But the biggest blow came when Jackson fell ill and was hospitalized. I got the news from a distant relative. He had a heart attack and was rushed to the emergency room. My heart tightened. No matter how they disowned me, he was still my father. I hurriedly drove to St. Mary's Hospital in Phoenix, hoping just to see Jackson for a few minutes. I ran down the hallway asking a nurse, "Mr. Jackson Avery's room?" She pointed, "Room 312. I rushed there, but right in front of the door, my mother stood blocking the way, her face pale but eyes blazing. She shooed me away like I was evil. "What are you here for?" "To finish off your father, too." Her voice echoed down the hallway, making a few patients look up. I begged, "Mom, I just want to visit Dad. How is he?" But she shook her head. "You're not allowed in. You're not my son." And then she turned to the nurse. "Miss, this man isn't family. Don't let him in." The nurse looked at me sympathetically but followed protocol. "I'm sorry, sir, if the family refuses." I stood frozen in the hospital hallway, peering through the frosted glass at the father who, though rarely, had once carried me on his shoulders, now lying weakly in bed with machines beeping around him. He looked gaunt, his white hair disheveled, eyes closed. I wanted to rush in, hug him, say, "Dad, I've come to see you." But I couldn't. My feet felt nailed to the floor, tears rolling down. I stood there for hours until a nurse politely asked me to leave. I turned away, walking out to the parking lot where the cold desert wind blew through, leaving me empty inside. During that time, I lived in a state of layered loss, losing my brother, my family, my honor, my faith in blood ties. Only my job and the law remained as fragile anchors, keeping me from total collapse. Every morning I woke up, looked in the mirror, and saw a stranger. Dark circles under my eyes, a forced smile. Work at the FBI became my escape. I threw myself into the Black Orchid files, analyzing data, attending meetings until exhaustion. "Alvin, you should take a break," colleagues said. But rest for what? To think about Rex, about my parents? The law was the only thing left with meaning. It was fair, impartial, unlike family ties. But even that was fragile. Every time I looked at the files, I saw Rex's name and the pain surged. Analia became my only sanctuary. She came home earlier, cooked simple meals like pasta or salad, things I liked to help me forget. Every evening we sat on the sofa and I talked. I told her about being thrown out with my things, about standing outside the hospital. She listened to every pain I recounted without judgment or doubt, just silently placing her hand on my shoulder when I couldn't continue. "If crying will make it easier, then cry," she whispered. Her understanding helped me hold on to a part of myself during the darkest days. Once I buried my head in her lap. "Honey, I've lost everything. How can I go on?" She stroked my back. "Because you still have me, and you're stronger than they think." We walked in the desert on weekends, hand in hand, wind blowing sand around. "We'll have children," she said, giving me dreams of the future. But the pain was still there, like a shadow. Yet even with my wife's encouragement, a hard-to-describe feeling lingered inside me. Something unclear about Rex's death, about my parents' overly intense reaction, about the hatred as if they were hiding something deeper than just the grief of losing a son. The more I tried to ignore it, the more it felt like an invisible hand pulling me back to the Black Orchid case, as if the story wasn't over and the truth was far greater than anything I had known. After Rex's death, Operation Black Orchid continued to expand. The atmosphere in the office was more tense than ever. We had taken down a major branch, but the organization was like a hydra, cut off one head and another grew in its place. One morning, a colleague slid a new report from the analysis department across my desk. "Alvin, take a look at this. Traces leading to the Phoenix branch ringleader." I opened the file, my heart racing. The report revealed covert transactions, sophisticated encryption, all pointing back to Central Phoenix. My boss called an emergency meeting. We need to go through all the data again. Leave nothing unchecked. We dove into the work, spending hours in front of screens, filtering transactions, reviewing security cameras, analyzing audio recordings. I tried to focus, but every detail cut like a knife. Rex had been part of this, and now he was gone. Colleagues patted my shoulder in consolation, but the weight in my chest remained crushing. Then unusual transactions began to surface. A sum laundered through cryptocurrency, originating from a fake account but with a familiar IP address. I zoomed in, and my heart stopped. The IP matched my parents' home. The deeper we dug, the clearer it became. The fake accounts, security footage from withdrawal points, everything gradually led to one place, my parents' house. My mother's small grocery store, the one where she sold odds and ends to the neighbors, turned out to be a transfer point. Money laundering transactions originated there, fake invoices, cash handoffs. Their home IP had logged into the organization's crypto wallets not just once. Bank security cameras near the house captured my mother handing a black bag to a suspect, heavy, no doubt containing cash or documents. And an intercepted phone call recording. My father's voice, unmistakable, discussing something with someone on the other end about loyalty. "We have to keep this secret," he said, his voice low but firm. Everything connected. My parents weren't victims, they were part of the network. These clues left me stunned. I sat frozen in the office, the files slipping from my hands to the floor. My parents' hostile reaction after Rex's death now had an explanation. They feared the truth coming out. It wasn't just grief over losing a son, they were afraid of exposure. They knew Rex was involved, and they were too? How could this be? I stood motionless in front of the screen, asking myself. My parents, the ones who had taught me to live honestly, to never lie, now appeared in the investigation files as ringleaders. A colleague approached, voice lowered. "Alvin, are you okay?" I gave a bitter smile and shook my head. "No, this is my parents' house." He fell silent. No one in the room said another word. The air grew thick. My boss stood beside me, looking at me for a long time before speaking, his voice slow and steady. "I know this isn't easy for you." He paused, then continued. "But we have to keep going. Not for the case, not for duty, but for justice. And for the innocent people waiting for the truth." I nodded. I knew he was right. But inside my chest, everything felt crushed. That night at home, I told Analia everything. She hugged me. "Honey, this isn't your fault. You did the right thing in the cruelest circumstances." I cried. "I'm not afraid of the truth. I'm just afraid of losing my family." The suspicion had now become certainty, and suspense built. What to do next? We gathered more evidence. I led the team in reviewing footage, analyzing audio with software. My father's voice matched 99%. Transactions from my mother's store. Fake grocery invoices involving enormous sums. I remembered that store. The smell of stale bread, dusty shelves, my mother smiling at customers. Now it was a criminal den. Each new piece of evidence was like a stab. My parents didn't just know, they were heading the Phoenix branch. I was torn, report it or cover it up. But my conscience wouldn't allow it. The victims, the elderly women who lost their retirement savings, families torn apart by debt, deserved justice. I signed the report, my hand shaking. "Boss, this is ironclad evidence." When the evidence was strong enough, arrest warrants were issued. I sat in the conference room, staring at the federal court order. Arrest Jackson and Denise Avery. My hands trembled as I signed off, knowing I was about to face the most painful task of my life. "Alvin, do you want to step back?" my boss asked. I shook my head. "No, I have to do it. For justice." But inside, I was burning. Analia waited at home. "Honey, I'm worried about you." I hugged her. "I have to finish this." That night, I didn't sleep, imagining the arrest scene. How would my parents react? Would they hate me even more? The suspense was like the calm before a storm, desert winds blowing hard, signaling turmoil. On the night of the raid, I went with the SWAT team to my parents' house. It was midnight, the Arizona sky pitch black, only stars twinkling. The SWAT team, 10 agents in black gear, handguns, shields, moved silently like shadows. I sat in the back of the van, heart pounding. "Alvin, you can stay in the vehicle if you want," the team leader said. I shook my head. "No, I have to be there." We parked 100 meters away, lights off. The neighborhood was quiet, only distant dogs barking. The team approached, simultaneously breaching the door and storming in, giving Jackson and Denise no chance to destroy evidence or flee. The sound of the door shattering rang out sharply, flashlights sweeping wildly. "FBI, get down on the floor. Drop your weapons." Shouts echoed urgently. I ran in behind, stepping into the house, the familiar smell of old coffee and bread, now in chaos. When I entered last, the sight of my parents subdued in the familiar living room made my heart constrict. My father sat on the floor, hands cuffed behind his back, face flushed with rage. My mother knelt beside him, sobbing, hair disheveled. The living room, where I'd once eaten dinner and watched TV with Rex, was now filled with agents, blinding flashlights. As soon as my father saw me, he erupted, jerking against the agents holding him, shouting, You've come to finish off your parents after killing your brother." His voice echoed, full of hatred. The agents pulled him back, but he struggled. "Let me go, ungrateful son." My heart ached. My father, who once taught me to play soccer, now looked at me like an enemy. My mother bitterly spat words that tore through the air. "Alvin, you've destroyed everything. This family has completely collapsed since you chose to side with the law. You only know how to judge. You've never protected us once." She cried, tears streaming, hands reaching toward me as if pleading, "You're my son. How could you do this?" Her words cut like knives. Protect? I'd sent money, fixed the house. What now? I stood before them, looking at the two faces I had once respected, the ones I'd tried to help for years. My father's wrinkled face, eyes blazing, my mother gaunt and trembling. I took a deep breath, my voice faltering, and read the arrest warrant. "Jackson and Denise Avery, you are under arrest for fraud, money laundering, and participation in the Black Orchid criminal organization." The reading echoed amid the shouting, denials, and frantic struggling of my own parents. My father kept claiming innocence, saying all the evidence was fabricated, that I was deliberately pushing them into prison to clear my own guilt. "You're afraid of being implicated because of Rex. So now you're selling out your parents," he roared, eyes bloodshot. The agents forced him down, but he still shouted, "My own son. He betrayed his blood." My mother sobbed and begged for mercy. "Alvin, my child, I'm begging you. Don't do this. I'm old." Then she switched to cursing. "You'll regret this. Heaven will punish you." She thrashed, nails scratching the agent's arms, desperately clinging to any slim hope. I stood there, unable to move, tears rolling down. How had it come to this? I wanted to shout, "Mom, Dad, why did you do this? Why deceive me?" But I only stood silent, watching them being dragged away. The SWAT team cuffed them and escorted them out amid feeble resistance. My father kept cursing. My mother fainted from crying. I just watched, feeling as if another part of my life had collapsed, once again losing the people I wanted to believe were my family. The living room emptied, leaving only the smell of smoke and dust. I collapsed onto the old sofa, mind blank. Outside, neighbors gathered in crowds, pointing and whispering nonstop. Patrol car lights flashed red and blue, illuminating curious faces. Some filmed with their phones. "Look, they're arresting the Averys," others whispered to each other. "This family has had issues for a long time. Rex died, now the parents are arrested. Alvin must have known and went hard on them." The murmurs buzzed like a disturbed hive, piercing my ears. I stepped out into the flashing patrol lights amid the vague whispers, feeling like the whole world was watching me as the one standing on the line between crime and justice. Right, but suffocatingly alone. The desert wind blew cold, carrying dust and sand. I stood there, watching the vehicle carrying my parents disappear, taillights fading into the distance. The suspense lingered. The trial was coming and the truth would be revealed, but for now only loneliness remained. In the days following the raid, interrogations took place continuously. The FBI office in Phoenix became the eye of the storm. My parents, Jackson and Denise, were separated and brought into interrogation rooms for questioning. I didn't participate directly, but my boss allowed me to follow the proceedings through the records. They maintained absolute silence, refusing to confess or make statements, insisting only that they had been framed. In his first interrogation, my father sat upright, staring intently at the investigator. "It's all lies. Alvin framed us to cover up the fact that he killed Rex." My mother sobbed. "We're innocent. This is a conspiracy." They refused counsel, believing silence would save them. But the investigation team didn't stop. They cross-referenced all the data: bank transactions, cryptocurrency statements, security videos, and testimonies from other arrested suspects. The underlings in Nevada and California spilled everything. Mr. and Mrs. Avery were the bosses. They coordinated the money and covered the operations. The findings showed they weren't minor links, but the actual ringleaders of Black Orchid's Phoenix branch, responsible for directing cash flows and concealing activities. My mother's grocery store was the perfect front. Dirty money flowed through it like water. My father used his old mechanical knowledge to arrange secret meetings. Everything connected. They had built the network 5 years earlier, siphoning money from hundreds of victims. The truth was even crueler. They had lured Rex into the network themselves, using him as a pawn for the dirty work while shielding themselves. One suspect's testimony: Rex was introduced by his parents. They told him it was to help the family. My hands shook as I read it. Rex, my little brother, had been pushed into hell by our parents. They used him to withdraw money and meet victims while they directed from behind the scenes. Why had they done it? Greed? Or desperation from mounting debts? Suspense built as I thought. If Rex hadn't died, would they have continued? When all the evidence was presented, undeniable, they finally confessed everything. The decisive interrogation. The investigator laid out all the documents, videos, and recordings in front of them. "This is the evidence. There's no escape." My father bowed his head and admitted guilt. My mother cried along, "We didn't want to." But the debts piled up. Their confessions revealed the most painful truth. They had ordered Rex to kill me because if Alvin were gone, the family's involvement would be harder to uncover. "Rex, if the day comes when you encounter Alvin, shoot him. He's a threat," my father said in a hidden recording. Rex initially refused, but they pressured him. "It's the only way to save the family." When everything collapsed, they immediately shifted all blame for Rex's death onto me to evade responsibility and divert public suspicion. "Tell everyone Alvin killed Rex. They'll stop suspecting and we'll get away," my mother instructed a relative over the phone. It was all planned, using grief to conceal their crimes. I stood behind the one-way glass listening to the entire confession. Every word stabbed straight into my heart, leaving me frozen. The observation room was pitch dark, only the static hiss from the speakers. My father said, "We needed to eliminate Alvin, because he knew too much about the case." My mother added, "Rex intended to kill his brother, but the kid was too weak." My heart constricted. They wanted me dead? The father who once carried me on his shoulders, the mother who once sang me to sleep, now wanted me dead to cover their crimes? I leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. A colleague said, "Alvin, go home and rest." But I stayed, listening to the end. I had tried to understand, blamed myself, thought my parents were just acting blindly out of grief, but I never imagined they were the root of the tragedy. They started it all, luring Rex, forcing him to shoot me, then disowning me to deflect suspicion. I lost Rex because of them, lost my family because of them. Tears rolled down silently without loud sobbing. Just a cold void. The trial of Jackson and Denise took place a few weeks later, drawing massive media attention due to the scale of the case and the extraordinary family elements. The federal courthouse in Phoenix was packed. Reporters, victims, distant relatives. I sat in the back row in a black suit, heart pounding. My parents were led in, handcuffed, faces gaunt. My father glared at me with hatred. My mother turned away crying so I couldn't see. The judge gavels to start. The prosecutor presented a litany of charges including federal wire fraud, organized money laundering, financial manipulation, concealment of illegal transactions, obstruction of investigation, and incitement to violent acts endangering a federal agent's life. The evidence was overwhelming. Videos, statements, testimonies. The defense attorney tried, but in vain. The court sentenced Jackson Avery to 28 years in federal prison and Denise Avery to 24 years in a federal correctional facility. The verdict was read in a heavy atmosphere. My father bowed his head in defeat. My mother burst into sobs but had no one to cling to, reaching toward her lawyer. I just watched from afar. No triumph, no relief, only a cold emptiness inside. Justice prevailed, but why did I feel like the loser? They were led away. My mother turned to look at me one last time, calling my name in a broken voice. I turned away without responding. The media covered it extensively. From a seemingly ordinary family exposed as a sophisticated criminal network, from the agent who killed his brother to the twist that the parents were the masterminds, the Avery family story dominated every news outlet. CNN, family tragedy in Black Orchid, local papers, Agent Avery, hero or victim? #number Avery scandal trended. As I stepped out of the courthouse under a barrage of cameras and curious stares, I felt as if I'd just emerged from a massive storm. The Arizona sun blazed harshly, but my heart was ice cold. Reporters snapped photos and shouted questions. "Alvin, did Mr. and Mrs. Avery say anything to you after the sentencing?" I remained silent, walking to my car. I had nothing left to lose, only the road ahead and a new life to rebuild from scratch. In the days following the trial, my name appeared frequently in the press, but this time without the heavy accusations or suspicion. No longer headlines like "Agent Kills Own Brother" or "Shady Family Tragedy." Instead, they were praising titles. Alvin Avery, the silent hero who dismantled Black Orchid. Federal authorities commended me as a steadfast and courageous agent who had helped dismantle one of Arizona's most complex fraud networks. I received an email from the director. "You've sacrificed a great deal, but thanks to you, justice has been served." Colleagues sent congratulatory messages and reporters interviewed me over the phone. An article in the Arizona Republic wrote, "Alvin Avery didn't just solve the case, he confronted the darkness from within his own family to protect thousands of victims." I read it with an empty heart. Those beautiful words, steadfast, courageous, felt foreign, as if they described someone else. I had once dreamed of recognition, but now, it didn't fill the void left by Rex, nor erase the image of my parents in handcuffs. I was honored at a bureau meeting, receiving a commendation and consideration for promotion once the operation concluded. It was one morning at the FBI Phoenix headquarters, in the large conference room with the American flag on the wall. My boss stood at the podium, voice resounding. "Alvin Avery has demonstrated unyielding spirit in the face of personal pressure. He is an example to us all." Colleagues applauded thunderously and shook my hand in congratulations. My direct superior praised my perseverance and resilience under pressure. "You chose justice over family ties. That's something not everyone can do." I accepted the commendation, a glossy certificate with a gold signature, and forced a smile. I sincerely thank everyone. The meeting ended and I stepped outside, breathing in the desert air. The media portrayed me as a hero, one who sacrificed family for justice. Articles referred to me with words I never thought I'd hear. Bravely facing family tragedy, a model of integrity for the FBI. CNN interviewed experts. Alvin Avery represents the FBI spirit, justice above all. Local papers ran photos of me leaving court captioned, "The man who broke the network from within his own blood." My phone buzzed incessantly, reporters wanting interviews, TV stations inviting me on talk shows. I declined everything and turned it off. Analia smiled. "You're famous now." I shook my head. This kind of fame, I don't need it. But public opinion had shifted. Relatives and neighbors, those who had once whispered, sneered, and looked at me with suspicion, suddenly changed their tune. They praised me, inquired after me, tried to strike up conversations with awkward friendliness, as if the harsh words and condemning glances had never existed. I felt only emptiness, not from the recognition, but from realizing how quickly people's hearts could turn, while wounds remained. But I felt no joy or relief. The praise, the spotlight, the awards suddenly seemed meaningless when I realized I no longer had a family. The commendation sat on the table, but every evening I stared at the empty space on the wall where family photos once hung. Rex grinning widely, my parents with arms around me. Now just blank wall. All I had left was Analia, the only one who never abandoned me, no matter the circumstances. She cooked, listened to me talk, held me as I slept. "You'll be okay, but you need time," she whispered. I nodded, but the pain lingered. Life gradually stabilized. I returned to the office, handling new files, but without enthusiasm. Colleagues asked, "Alvin, ready for that promotion?" I shook my head. Not yet. I walked alone in the desert, wind-blowing sand, thinking of Rex. He died because of our parents, because of their greed. I wondered, if I'd known sooner, could I have saved him? Old doubts returned, but now as regret. Life gradually stabilized, but I knew a crack remained in my heart, unhealed. The final confrontation I never had with my parents. Part of me wanted to close that painful chapter, not to forgive, but to know it was truly over. I wrestled with it many nights. Why visit them? To hear more curses or to ask why? Analia advised, "Honey, if you need to, you should go. For your own peace of mind." I hesitated, but finally decided. After much deliberation, I submitted a request to visit the prison. A few weeks later, it was approved. I drove to the federal prison on the outskirts of Arizona, a gray concrete building with towering barbed wire fences. The atmosphere was chilling, eerily silent. Iron doors creaked, the strong smell of disinfectant. I went through security, heart pounding. The visiting room, tables with glass partitions, old telephones. I sat waiting, hands clenched. My father, Jackson, was brought in first, his hair much grayer, eyes weary. He wore gray prison garb, walking slowly, handcuffs clinking. My mother, Denise, followed, thinner than before, eyes red from crying. They sat opposite me through the glass, picking up the receivers. My father frowned upon seeing me, his eyes flashing with familiar hostility. He showed no remorse, no shame, only bitter words, as if I were the one who had ruined their lives. He looked straight at me, voice hoarse with resentment. "What are you here for? To gloat in our faces?" I remained calm, trying to keep my voice steady. "I came to hear the truth." He sneered, a dry laugh. "The truth? The truth is, if you hadn't been so stubborn, so obsessed with your precious law, this family wouldn't have fallen apart." Then he growled, each word hammering down. "You chose the FBI over us. And now, Rex is dead, we're in prison. Satisfied?" I shook my head, voice lowering. "I never wanted this to happen." He slammed his hand on the table, eyes reddening with anger. "Don't pretend to be noble. You killed Rex and destroyed this family's future." He leaned toward me, speaking slowly to etch each word. "If you hadn't interfered, Rex would still be alive and we'd be free." My mother burst into louder sobs, her voice breaking but full of bitterness. "Alvin, do you know how cruel you are? You'd rather let strangers live than protect your own blood." I said softly, almost whispering, "I couldn't turn my back on the truth." She shook her head repeatedly, tears streaming. "What truth? To me, only my son is dead." Then she pointed straight at me, shouting, "You're ungrateful. We raised you, and this is how you repay us, by putting us here?" I choked up but said what I'd carried for so long. "You two are the ones who pushed Rex down that path." The words caused a brief silence in the room. My mother sobbed even harder, voice nearly screaming, "Shut up! You killed Rex and now you want to kill us too?" They blamed me for their imprisonment, for Rex's death, for their ruined lives, as if they weren't the ones who built the fraud network, incited Rex to aim a gun at me and destroyed the family from the roots. Their words were like poisonous wind whipping my face. My father growled, eyes cold. You cleared your name by betraying your own blood, using your brother's death to protect your career. My mother looked at me, tears flowing but voice full of hatred. From beginning to end, you were never really my son. That's why you could be so heartless as to drag the whole family down. I sat silently listening to it all. No rebuttal, no defense. My heart ached sharply as if something were squeezing it until I couldn't breathe. As Jackson and Denise continued pouring all blame onto me, I remained quiet for a long time, because I understood they didn't need the truth. They just needed someone to bear their guilt. I looked at the two people who had once been my parents, and in that gaze there was no longer anger, only silent pain. Their faces aged and weary under the cold neon lights. Then for the first time I spoke. I asked the question I'd carried since the night Rex died. Why did you order Rex to shoot me? Why make him kill his own brother? My father fell silent for a moment, eyes blinking rapidly, then resumed blaming, voice sharp as if seeking escape. That was coerced testimony. The police framed us. We had to say it to reduce our sentences. We had no choice. He shouted into the receiver as if volume alone could make the truth vanish. My mother sobbed, voice shattering in desperation. Rex did what I told him because he still listened, unlike you. Do you understand? He was weak. I had to protect him. If you hadn't interfered, everything would be different. She wept, pounding the glass partition, eyes full of hatred. You were the threat. All those words were like a dull blade cutting into an already deep wound, not breaking me, but making me realize one final truth. They had never truly seen me as their son. Never. From childhood, the favoritism toward Rex, the constant criticism of me, now clear. I was just a burden, an obstacle to their greed. I still sat silently. No reaction, no justification. I realized it wasn't the prison holding them. It was their greed and distortion that had long ago built their own walls. They chose crime, chose to sacrifice Rex and me to cover it, and now reaped the consequences. When visiting time ended, a guard announced it was over. I stood, placing the receiver down. My father still shouted venomous words after me. You'll regret this. Heaven will punish you. My mother wailed. Alvin, how can you abandon us? But it all faded like distant echoes muffled through the glass. I walked out of the visiting room, the iron door closing behind me with a heavy clang. I didn't look back. There was no reason to anymore. The long prison hallway stretched ahead, my footsteps echoing. Outside, Arizona sunlight poured onto the cold concrete corridor. I took a deep breath. For the first time in months, I felt a little lighter. The desert wind blew, carrying the familiar scent of dust and earth. I drove home, mind clearer. Not forgiveness, but closure. My parents had chosen their path, now I chose mine. After that final confrontation in prison, I knew the old chapter of my life had truly closed. No more doubts, no more inner turmoil. The next morning, I woke up early, brewed coffee, and watched Analia still sleeping. I put on a suit and drove to the FBI office. The familiar atmosphere, the smell of paperwork, the whirring of printers, colleagues greeting me good morning. I calmly handed over all the files, reports, and responsibilities related to Operation Black Orchid. Sitting with my boss, I pushed the stack of documents toward him. Boss, I finished my part. He looked at me, eyes full of understanding. Alvin, are you sure? The operation is still expanding. I nodded. I'm sure. The other teams will do fine without me. The investigation into the organization continued in multiple other states, spreading far beyond Phoenix. Other teams took on the task of pursuing the remaining branches. From Nevada to Texas, new money laundering networks emerging. I knew I'd done my part, the most painful one. The part that took Rex, my parents, and a piece of my soul. Colleagues patted my shoulder. Alvin, you're a living legend. I forced a smile. I was just doing my job. But inside, I felt lighter. No more burden. I submitted my resignation, leaving my agent badge on the commander's desk. The silver badge gleamed under the neon lights with my name and the FBI insignia. Alvin Avery, Special Agent. No longer. My boss signed the papers without trying to stop me. No one blamed me. Everyone understood. No one could stay on the front lines forever, especially when those lines had cost me my entire family. A few months later, I applied to teach at a security academy, a place training young officers in financial crime investigation. It was a modern building on the outskirts of Phoenix with classrooms full of whiteboards and computers. I no longer chased dangerous operations, but my experience and life story became valuable lessons for the new generation. On the first day, I stood before the class, 30 young faces looking at me attentively. Today, we're talking about Black Orchid, I began, voice steady. I told them everything, from discovering Rex's involvement to arresting my parents to the trial, without hiding my emotions. Justice sometimes demands sacrifice, but don't let it consume you. A student asked, "Sir, do you regret it?" I paused, thinking of Rex. No, because if I did, I'd be betraying the victims. They applauded, and I felt a sense of purpose. My life with Analia gradually stabilized. We bought a small house on the outskirts of Phoenix, a white wooden home with a spacious backyard for planting. "Honey, let's fix up the house," I said. We painted the walls together, planted saguaro cacti and wildflowers, turning it into a true home. Every morning I woke to the smell of coffee Analia brewed, looking out at the lush backyard. In the peace of each morning, I felt something I thought I'd lost forever, a sense of safety. No more case worries, no more nightmares of Rex. Many years passed, and Analia became pregnant, giving birth to adorable twin boys. It was a spring morning, the Phoenix hospital flooded with sunlight. I held her hand through the delivery, tears streaming as I heard their first cries. Liam and Noah, the names I chose, hoping to bring light and a new beginning to our family. Liam strong like the waves, Noah peaceful like the rainbow after rain. Back home, the two lay in their cribs, wide eyes gazing at the world as if it held no darkness. I hugged Analia and whispered firmly, "Thank you for never leaving me. Because of you, I still have a place to call home." Analia leaned her head on my shoulder, smiling wearily after the long days. Being here together is enough. Everything else, we leave behind. In the early months, I stayed up nights rocking them, warming bottles, changing diapers, learning to listen to every tiny breath. When the two little ones grasped my finger, I silently vowed, not in words but with my entire life, that I would never become the kind of parent who shattered a family. I would not favor one, not impose burdens, not turn love into chains or weapons. I would be the father I had once wished for, listening, fair, loving unconditionally. "Liam, Noah, Daddy will always be here," I whispered. Analia smiled. "You'll be a wonderful father." I nodded, heart warm. In the years that followed, the boys grew. Liam mischievous, loving to run and play, Noah quieter, fond of books. I taught them soccer in the backyard. Analia read bedtime stories. No favoritism. When Liam broke a vase, I had both clean it up together. If you make a mistake, fix it and learn from it. No one takes the blame for another, I said. They grinned mischievously. One afternoon, as Liam and Noah played under the golden Arizona sunset, I stood on the porch watching them. Two little beings laughing loudly as if untouched by darkness. Liam chased Noah with a ball, their laughter echoing. The wind blew gently, carrying the scent of wildflowers. Watching that scene, I reflected on the journey. Losing Rex, betrayal from my parents, choosing justice, the heavy responsibility and perseverance through darkness. From pursuing agent to sharing instructor to ordinary father. I understood that despite the painful path, I had arrived where I needed to be. A life true to the values I believed in. Justice, love, truth, the things I fought for, now the foundation. I drew a profound lesson for myself and for my sons later. Family is not just blood. Family is where there is love, respect, and kindness. My biological parents taught me the opposite, but Analia and the boys proved the truth. Truth can be cruel, but facing it is better than living with beautiful lies. Like Black Orchid, beautiful on the outside, rotten within. And choosing kindness today shapes tomorrow's life. No one gets to decide who you become except yourself. I chose justice even when it cost me everything. Now I choose happiness, and it has come. Alvin watched his sons laugh joyfully, heart light as air. The past had faded, and I chose to move forward not for titles or recognition, but for a clearer future for my little family.